I had just finished a job in the Galapagos Islands, which was like everyone's dream. Just felt like I needed to be doing something else with my life. So I was kind of in Aruba, kind of like in a holding pattern, trying to figure out what to do with my life.
I was working as a lawyer in DC at the time, an office building in Bethesda, Maryland, in a suit and a tie, with this tiny little window in this depressing little office. I had just driven my Volvo station wagon across town, like on the Beltway, like in traffic, trying not to let people merge in front of me, just being all cranky.
I had this kind of a crazy idea to open up a surf shop on Aruba, and he just said, like, man, I'd love to get on that project with you, which is a very pleasant surprise to me. He hadn't even been to Aruba before.
I brought the Volvo station wagon, but everything else I left behind.
And they had the most outrageously idealistic dream of creating a shop that would be fun to work in and spread humor and goodwill around the community.
We had never worked in retail before, and we just loved surf shops, and that was it. I apologize to the author for not being as helpful as we probably should have been throughout the process. And the book itself is not about how great we are. It's about what boneheads we were and all the mistakes we made and how it was probably a bad idea in the first place.
What kept me going was my curiosity about the story. How the heck did these two guys succeed so admirably when they had very few resources and virtually no experience? When I arrived in Aruba in 2021, which is the year the book started, I was feeling like millions of other people, dislocated, lonely, creatively nowhere. And so my big goal was to go to Aruba and just hang out in the water and float around.
You were sitting, I think, there. The wind was blowing a lot more strongly, and you told me about Bula surviving the pandemic.
It was like a zombie movie or something. It was wild. We just really didn't know what to expect.
David is my stepson. Late in life, I will say. He had already started Bula 20 plus years ago when I married his dad. And so he was fully grown. He didn't need a stepmother. So we became more friends.
Another thing you said to me I'll never forget, which is not only was Bula, the business, doing well, but you were still best friends with Yair. And that just struck me as, what secret do they have about happiness?
Most people approach business from this idea of trying to make money or provide for themselves, and I really do think the biggest motivator for us starting the business was just like a way to continue to be friends and to kind of hang out with each other. That sounds kind of stupid when I say it out loud. I think it's true.
The night that David said that to me under the mango trees in his backyard, I proposed at dinner that I would write a book about their story. And their first reaction was, no way.
I'm a pretty introverted and private person, so I wasn't that excited about the idea.
We were very kind of like private people and not interested in expanding our empire in any way.
They're extremely self-effacing. I interviewed them for weeks and weeks and weeks just to get to the heart of who are these two people and how did they make decisions.
We were so clueless in every single way that it's not like there's any specific thing that we were naive about. And we had to learn everything about running a surf shop from scratch, mostly the hard way.
We didn't have an idea of how many items you need to sell in order to break even. We didn't have an idea of like what our actual costs were going to be. There was this window that we managed to open up in purely by chance. We were like this harmless little fish, and we were lucky that there were no big sharks around, or else we wouldn't have lasted more than 6 months.
I think people could really tell that despite the fact that we were totally out of our depth, that our love for what we were doing probably showed through, and that's what made people want to shop in Bula.
Their approach was follow the path they want to make for themselves. If something didn't feel fun or right to their values, they would just walk away. So they were constant rule breakers.
If you're a business like ours, you spend typically about 10% of turnover on advertising. So we came up with this idea that we would take that 10% and either use it for sponsoring local athletes and competitions to kind of feed back into our prices to try to make our prices a little more approachable. Looking back on it, almost seems like a random decision, but it actually really paid off for us.
For me, it's like the dream, like a livelihood that allows you to, work with your best friend.
And we've been, great friends for so long. He's got my back for everything, and it's really important. I mean, it's something that makes your life a lot nicer and more fun and everything.
I mean, we're trying to be a surf shop, not a tourist shop, and so the shirts and the designs that we came up with were mostly trying to have like original designs to try to build our own brand.
One of the surfer slang things to say at the time was douche you, which was like saying awesome or sweet man or that kind of thing. Being new to the island, then surfing all the time with people saying douche you, just thought it was hilarious, and I loved the sound of douche you. We just stuck the words douche you on a t-shirt and it became really popular, but at the time there was nothing like that. There's not a single thing with any word of Papi Manto on it. That was just totally for locals. It was our first real hit product.
Now that Bula has a little bit more of an established platform on the island, we like to take advantage of that to promote, musicians that we like, artists that we like. That's also a really big part of like what I think of as the Bula culture.
We just continually are working with different artists locally to kind of put their art forward, different photographers and painters and graphic designers to kind of help them get their name out. And also, it's like we really like new injections of creativity in our business, and it's like total win-win.
To get into the story and decode how they became successful, I ended up studying other successful people, of course. Some of the studies led me to neuroscience, how the successful people's brains work and how they make decisions.
Numerous studies and ancient wisdom confirm this. By prioritizing friendship, playfulness, and community, David and Yair intuitively discovered 3 of the keys to living a long and rewarding life.
You just come into here and you go out and you're like a new person. Something changed inside of you when you leave Bula.
To me, it was always, what does Bula mean for the community? Bula is here to help the culture, to help drive it forward.
Although they're getting older, it doesn't feel like their product is getting older.
It gives me hope that something like that is still possible in this day and age where everything is so big and so loud and so commercial.
I think they're great role models, definitely, because it makes you very humble. There is lots of lessons to be learned. I think they are amazing educators.
And they're both very inspiring people. They're giving back all the time to the community. So I think it's a really amazing example to set.
As locals, we're not going around wearing just like the standard I Love Aruba shirt, right? The Bula tees, they really made it like reflect the real Aruba.
They're collaborating more and more with local artists to promote skills and talents on the island. I think is really a fantastic thing.
The way we've set it up recently, given us tons of like free time, which is for me the most valuable part of the whole operation.
But it definitely feels fortunate that we've achieved that ability to like live in the tropics and like run a business that we like with friends and people that we like and work in an industry that we respect.
What is it that you thought would be so interesting about our lives?
This is not going to make the book fly off the shelves, by the way, what I just said.
Well, not the way I asked it, sorry. I was actually trying to set you up for...
I said, oh, good answer. So what I originally thought was the story was, you guys were mavericks. You had the courage to do everything your own way. You didn't listen to experts, you didn't get an MBA. You weren't perfectionist about starting the business, and that ran so counter to how I've done everything in my career. Then I realized it was much more a story about courage. Everyone knows how hard it is to jump off a default path, the conventional path, and go on your own path. Publishing this book, I realized something. David and Yair's unconventional path reminded me of the experimental B-side of old vinyl records, where the artists trusted their imaginations and creativity over the mainstream formulas. This whole experience has led to my own flip to the B-side moment. Lately, I've been wondering, what other cool B-siders are out there? That's going to be my next adventure. And who knows where that's going to take us.
Douche you! Woo! Buong ulam.